everyone, and welcome to another Kathy Barnette podcast. You guys are amazing. Before we begin, because I'm going to jump straight really quickly to my guest, you know the drill. Hit the subscribe button, notification, make a comment, and share it, okay? But without further ado, I want to bring in Jason Whitlock. Hello, Jason. How are you?
Awesome, Kathy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. I've been trying to get you on for a while. You have really great producers. And so I'm so grateful that your schedule opened up and you're here.
I am here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I want it to be. I want it to be a conversation because you and I I've been on your show. Jason is the host of Fearless with Jason Whitlock. And you're also a columnist for the Blaze News, an award-winning journalist, and you challenge groupthink. I think of you, when I think of you, I think of someone who has convictions in spades. You don't lack conviction on a variety of topics. And in a world where there's very little convictions, everything seems extremely fluid. You get to make it up as you go. You get to have opinions about weighty issues, and you've never opened a book to read or consider. That's the culture in which we live in. So when I see people who actually have conviction, beliefs, thoughts, and whether you and I agree on those thoughts or not, I can tell and I can appreciate the fact that you are someone who have taken time to pause and consider some things. How do you maintain that? How did you become like that? Have you always been like that?
I don't always. That's tough, but I became this way because, I'm a true believer in journalism, and probably more important than that, I'm a true believer in God and a biblical truth. And so I feel like I'm standing on firm foundations of biblical truth, and being a journalist kind of prepares you or trains you, programs you to always be on a search for truth and have a willingness to follow truth wherever it leads. And so, I try to avoid talking about things that I know very little about, that I've done very little research on. And I try to talk about things that I've done tremendous research into and have taken a lot of time to consider.
In a culture, wherever I am, I talk very openly, like you, about Jesus, about my conversion, my salvation, him coming into my life. It meant something to me, and it changed the course my life was going on. And yet, whether I'm in TV, radio, or even on Twitter, I get people constantly saying, why do you always have to bring up Jesus? Right? Why do you Christians always got to bring up something about God? And I find that irritating, but kind of comical when you have grown men fighting.
I've run into it a little bit. People are off put in, our society, our cultures turned very secular. And there are many of us that Jesus, God, the Bible is our source for truth. It's our foundation of truth. And so we refer to it, the Bible, or him, Jesus, as our source of truth, whereas we've all been programmed by corporate media and by the spirit of the day to always reference race or gender or sexuality. And so that's what the culture wants to train you to do, is put on some sort of, hey, I'm a man or woman blinders and judge everything through that lens, or hey, I'm heterosexual or homosexual, judge everything through that lens, or I'm black, I'm white, I'm brown, I'm a person of color, judge everything through that lens. And whereas a Christian should judge everything, we really should think, what would Jesus do, and what does the Bible say about this or that? And so, when you cite your source and they don't like your source, they're going to complain.
They do. I just find it very hypocritical of these exact same people who say nothing about grown men putting on dresses and gyrating in front of, a bunch of 5-year-olds, but they seem to be, they clutch their pearls when I mention the name of Jesus. I think that has something to do with our culture, as you said, instead of referencing the values, the principles that this country was founded upon. We have a new set of values that seems to obsess over some immutable characteristics, like I'm Black, you're a man, I'm a woman, but we elevate those things and we say, this is our new religion. These are our new values that we must all kowtow down to. And this morning I woke up and I just took a list of the things. I woke up this morning and it was like all hell literally broke loose by the time I went to bed last night and woke up this morning. You have the Prime Minister of Bangladesh has been ousted. That is going to have significant global interactions or ramifications, especially in India. You have Israel now. Russian defense minister just landed in Iran. They are tight friends. Our government, Blinken, has put out a warning saying an attack from Iran on Israel is imminent. I woke up this morning, found out that the market really did tank all across the world, not just here in America, but Japan, Israel. I mean, all across in major markets. Woke up. North Korea deployed 250 missiles launched at their southern border. The relation between the Korea states are worst ever. Nigeria, they're in their halfway point of their 10-day of rage. And then the UK, I did see a little bit of that as I was going to bed last night. The citizens of UK all across the country are now in turmoil and they are attacking, it appears, Muslims and immigrants. It's just the world is on fire. And then I turn on our news and we're obsessing over gender, over, these right wing, according to them, people who are just pushing back. It doesn't seem like we're focusing on the right things. And with the world being on fire, the other thing I woke up to was people telling me if I'm Black, I have to vote for Kamala or else I'm not Black. How do we take all of this into consideration?
Well, again, I think it all starts with Kathy. Who do you answer to? And there's ramifications to who you identify as who you answer to. And so many people, again, in a secular society, are answering to their skin color or their sexuality or some political organization rather than answering to God. And so as we in mass move away from answering to God and we start running towards these identity differences, it's going to create so much chaos and division. We don't have a unifying force.
Right.
And so there was a time when it was American culture, not for everyone, but for a large percentage of American population, we all thought we were trying to answer to God. Now, we all didn't answer to God in the same way. We all didn't agree on how you properly answer to God, but we were all had a, let's say 68% of America or 70% all thought, hey, the God of the Bible, the King James Bible, is our source for truth and it's who we answer to. And just again, as we move away from that, now corporate media, now the agents of chaos, now the people that want to stir conflict, have all these buttons they can push and all these different agendas and distractions for us to talk about, is Kamala Harris Black, white, Indian, whatever? Hey, talk about that. Let's don't talk about what are her policy issues. Let's don't talk about what are the policy differences between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. Let's talk about personalities and skin color, and whether or not this person's performers at the Republican National Convention or the Democratic National Convention, do they appeal to this particular individual group, whether it be Black people or white people or Indian people or Asian people or whatever. Uh, you know, the it's a very cynical and skeptical worldview I have, that as we lean into diversity and inclusion and lean away from assimilation, quite honestly,
Mm.
it's hard to keep the country together. If there is no unifying force, it's just a bunch of individuals of varying religious views, and no particular group has more of a say or more of a consensus than another. The country just can't stay united, and this all seems by design. As
It
if
does.
Kathy, as I've had the scales come off my eyes with all these different news events over the past 25 years, it's made me go look back at the previous history even longer ago, even before I was alive, and start just reevaluating what was I told about World War II? What was I told about World War One? What was I told about the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the War of 1812? I've been trying to understand and just like reevaluate everything. It's just too many coincidences that,
Mm.
hey, Donald Trump nearly gets assassinated by some 20-year-old lone assassin, allegedly, who we can't get much information about. The Secret
And no
Service.
one's talking about it anymore.
Yeah.
Have you seen how quickly it has faded to the recesses of our mind? We're moving on like
Just,
nothing ever happened. And again, you're right. I mean, when you have your truth, I have my truth, their truth, his truth, everybody got truth. There is no truth, right? And there is nothing unifying by it. And we're all kind of moving according to our own North Star versus some unifying North Star, right? As a nation, certain values. Like values are like an umbrella, and we're all underneath that umbrella, right? We may have our individual uh, principles, but overarching, we know that there is such a thing as truth, and this is right. These are our values. But when you have 20 million illegals coming in from all around the world with their own set of values, it begins to quickly dilute the corporate values of this nation. When you have corporate media, you begin to dilute individual messaging and principles, and the media began to create these corporate narratives, these group things, right? We all have to think a certain way, move a certain way. But you're right. We have moved so far from anything that is unifying. This nation doesn't resemble much of what I grew up under, of thinking if I work hard and if I keep my nose clean, I can build a life for myself. Today, even now, it feels like we're going back in time. We're losing whatever kind of foothold we had in the in society and our culture, even from an economic perspective. How do we reverse this?
well, I mean, the reversal is just a return to, a unifying source of truth. I would suggest Jesus Christ. But Kathy, just think about where the Olympics are going on, and you've made reference to the Olympics and what was going on in boxing. But I'm 57, so I've lived through several Olympics, and just the way nationalism has been demonized.
Yeah.
And so taking any sort of pleasure, or I don't like the word pride, but it's the only one I can think of at the moment. Pride in your country has now been demonized. And so even the Olympics aren't really a unifying event the way they used to be. I look at yesterday, Simone Biles finished, I think, second in the floor exercise, but the whole big celebration was that I think the Spaniard woman won the gold, and another American woman finished third, and the celebration was an all black podium in
Yeah.
gymnastics, and they bowed to the Spaniard woman, and it was just all like, hold on, so we're
It's a new
choosing.
religion.
Yeah, we're choosing sides at the Olympics based on skin color, not on
Yeah.
country. It's and so this whole globalist movement is an affront or an attack on traditional American values. And if you're someone that believes that America was founded on Christian values, then it's an attack on a country that's tried its best for its 250-year history, 258-year history, or 248. I can't do that. I'm not great with math. Uh, uh, it's tried to be a Christian culture, and now that's completely out of style. And it's almost like Kathy Barnette and her husband and kids, they don't have a right to, within their home, have a set of values that they all try to live up to.
No.
Inside your home, you must be tolerant of all these other values, and you must hop on board. If they say that some XY man is a woman inside Kathy Barnett's home, she's got to adopt that worldview, or
And
she's
and and
outside
and
the norm.
and that does feel like the new litmus test on whether or not you're a good person is specifically what your thoughts are and how tolerant, according to them, how they define tolerant to the LGBTQ AI plus two community, right? Like it used to be, whether we agreed with it or not, it was, the litmus test was, are you a racist towards Black people? Are you open? Black people have now been kicked to the curb. The new litmus test, see, now, like they bring Black people out every 2 to 4 years when it's an election cycle. But after that, we get moved to the back very quickly. But what appears to be the new litmus test that defines if you are a good person or someone worthy to have an opinion, worthy to be in open society, is your thoughts on transgenderism. Primarily right now, even transgenderism has risen above just being gay and lesbian. That seems too weak. Now the thought is, it feels, is, if you're a good person, is predicated upon what your thoughts are and how open you are to transgenderism.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to that the previous standard was likely, and in my opinion, definitely inappropriate as well. We can't make ourselves God. We can't make ourselves the litmus test to see if you're a saint. That's idolatry. And so, as abhorrent as racial bias is, it's it's not the litmus test.
I agree.
And so, uh, you know, since we went down that path of, hey, everybody has to pander to or tell Black people everything they want to hear, or they're a bad person, we'll call them racist, and we'll say they're outside the body of Christ. That opens the door for the, as you mentioned, LGBTQIA plus. Don't forget the silent P. That group to come in and say that nope, now we're the new litmus test, and eventually, and I've been saying this now, I think for 15 years, Kathy. I was like, well, they're going to legalize pedophilia. It,
Oh,
it's the
absolutely.
it's the silent P right now, but they're already started the minor attracted
Absolutely.
people, and and
Absolutely.
and this is
Attraction
gonna,
to young love
yeah,
is the latest term and not phrasing I've heard, right? Young love attraction.
yeah,
Yeah. Pedophilia.
yeah.
And we see it.
We're headed down that path, and so you know, the Bible's pretty crystal clear,
There
and
you
it
go again, Jason, throwing up the Bible. What about those people? They're gonna feel some kind of way.
well, I'm talking about just as a litmus test for Christianity. The Bible is pretty clear about who is the way, and who is the truth, the way, and the life. And so it's not us, it's not me. And so I can't, and it's difficult for people to get in this mindset. But I do think we're commanded to get in this mindset. Is I don't really care how people feel about me. I care how people feel about God. And because if someone expresses a sincere passion for Jesus Christ is going to get inside them and start working on their flaws. And I don't have to do anything. All I got to do is, if they want to read the Bible with me, they want to pray with me, they want to talk about Jesus Christ with me, that will purify them. That will cleanse their heart. That will, you know, change the bad parts of them, because it's certainly what has happened to me. And so I think this idolatry that we've all fallen into, and hey, if you don't treat Black people in a certain way, you're damned to hell. If you don't treat the LGBTQ in a certain way, you're damned. If you don't treat women in a certain way, if you don't treat Black women in a certain way, boy, oh boy, you're just some of the worst people on the planet. It's all a false standard. It's all there to distract. If we would all just focus on the man or woman in the mirror, things would change very rapidly.
Yeah. And you've been pretty consistent for the short time you and I have known each other and have had the opportunity to speak. You've been very consistent that your North Star is Jesus. And if you look at the proof of what Jesus has, for those who have followed him, yes, we have not been perfect in this nation. You mentioned that earlier. America has not been a perfect nation. Here is one who has the blood of slaves coursing through her veins. And I understand the good, the bad, and the ugly within the history of this country. And yet, when you look at this country, there's no one running a close second to this country. We have perhaps been the true definition of progressive. We're always progressing. We're always trying to do better. We're not perfect as a country, but you see us moving forward, pushing, striving to truly love one another and to see the value in people. And then you have the left, the Democrats, communists, whatever you want to call them. They are the definition of regression. The moment it feels like Black people are now being judged based on the content of our character and not the color of our skin, Democrats introduce us to what we now know was the N-word all along, DEI. So for 4 years, they've been pushing the N-word, i.e. DEI, on all of us. They're very regressive, and it feels like we've gone back in time with women's rights, right? We had our own sport. We were competing. We were winning. You started getting more of a spotlight on women basketball and women's sports and activities. And all of a sudden, just like communists, they began to pull us back in time, and they've elevated men. Like the two people at the end of the boxing tournament was two men in a women's boxing sport. It's like we're going back in time. There's nothing progressive about the Democrat Party. They're very regressive as far as taking us back in time. And yet, I woke up again this morning reading an article where they were saying, if I don't vote for Kamala, I ain't Black. There's something wrong with me. I'm self-loathing and self-hating. Is that the case? If you don't vote for Democrat and you're Black, do you now get your Black card revoked? Like, how does that work?
Well, what they've done is put Black people in a unique position globally, and particularly here in America, is that we're the only group of people whose identity is defined by their politics.
It is true.
Every other ethnic group can vote for whomever they like without sacrificing their white, Asian, brown, Mexican identity. Black people have been assigned an identity consistent with the Democrat Party, and we have to ask ourselves, in whose interest Is that for our own self-interest, or are we some unique group of people on this planet who can own, whose identity needs to be attached to a political party? It's not true for anyone else. And so, you know, socially, societally, we're not free. We're not free to be whomever we like or wherever the truth may lead us. There is a harsh penalty for not being a Democrat in
Yes,
America.
it is.
I would say this, Kathy, and I'm not correcting you, but I just have a different take in terms of the left is making incredible progress, because this is like a 110-year plan that they've been executing to get
Yeah,
us where we are right now. The slow march through the institutions that Marxists and communists talk
yeah,
about has taken place. And again, they hatched this plan a long time ago.
yeah,
And it
yeah.
has
And so when
taken,
you say making, I will agree with you. They are making tremendous progress and destroying our individual freedoms and liberties and how I want to think and feel and live my life and raising my children. So it's the side of the same coin, the way I said it, that they're regressive in anything that is good. But they're very progressive in shoving down our throat those particular values and systems and ideologies that will upend society. And it's not an opinion, it's history.
it's documented history, and just worse than that, it's soul snatching in terms of it,
It is.
because in order to follow this leftward path, this Marxist path, you have to sacrifice your relationship with Jesus Christ. And many people that go to church have no idea that just the going to church isn't your relationship with Jesus Christ. I'm not anti going to church.
What?
I've been going to church on Saturdays and Sundays. I'm pro going to church, but many of our churches have become so politicized and
Yeah.
so filled with heresy that you would be better off not going to church. And we've clearly, as you've referenced earlier, we've adopted these new religions of Black
Yeah.
and of celebration of the matriarchy, because that's at the root of a lot of this, the battle between man and woman, the patriarchy versus the matriarchy. Who did God give dominion over everything, the sea and creepeth and crawleth on the earth? And do we respect male leadership, or do we believe that women should be the leaders? And there's arguments that we've lost so many great men to this constant war machine
Yeah.
all over the world, that and maybe that's why we have so many weak men left behind, and young men who have been raised by weak men.
And you were one of the first ones that I saw years ago. And I don't know anything about sports. I make it my own religion. I don't want to know nothing. Right? I'm just not into it. But I saw you when you left ESPN. And one of the things that, because, and I guess the reason why I connected was because I too was watching the feminization of our men, telling men essentially just believe the woman, shut up, sit down, be quiet, just believe the woman, no one cares. I was watching it. I was a stay-at-home mom during that time, and I was homeschooling our children, and I happened to walk into the room, and there was a Disney show on, and the teenage daughter was just so condescending to the father, who always was the butt of the joke. And I remember telling my kids, turn it off. This is not how we see daddy. This is not how we interact with daddy. And we ended our subscription to Disney from that point forward. But I think that was around about that time when you left ESPN, and I started hearing you talk about why you were leaving and that whole feminization of men, because I earnestly believe that we can get our country back on track if men would just stand up and be men and begin to speak truth and begin to draw some hard lines in the sand of, this is my family, this is as far as you're going to go. I think that the feminization of our men and pushing women to act like men when we're not has perhaps been one of the greatest reasons, if you're looking for a reason on how we get to a culture where now perverse men are being able to dress in provocative sexualized apparel and go gyrate in front of 5-year-olds. You say to yourself, how did we get here? And again, I always come back to, as I meant, I blame this, I blame that, I'm going backward through the steps, and it comes to fathers, and it comes to men in general in the home, not assuming their role in leading the family.
We have set up a system of rewards for the emasculation of men, Black men in particular, but men in general. And I say that because the question you asked, like, how did we get here? That's a question I ask all the time. When you're my age and the world used to be one way, and then all of a sudden it goes a completely different direction. You're like, wow, how did this happen? And it's the corporate America has a system of rewards for the promotion of, the elevation of, the installment of feminine leadership everywhere. And so a man in his work environment has to adopt a feminist mindset in order to survive and rise.
And what is a feminist mindset? What is that?
It's a mindset that really believes in diversity, equity, and inclusion. That would be
the N word. The N word.
Yeah, that believes like, well, hold on. You know what? As men, we can't do this. We better install a gay person, a couple of 2 or 3 females. We have to put them all in. We can't just select who we think might be the best leader in this environment or the best person for this position. We have to factor in diversity, equity, and inclusion, or we're not being fair, or we're being, sexist pigs. And it all comes from, they've convinced us that America's history and the world's history is a history of men being unfair to women. And it's not true. And this guilt trip they've been laying on us that, oh my God, if women had been treated fairly in the 1700s, well, there would probably be a woman quarterback or 10 in the NFL. That's the lie they keep telling us. And I keep asking people, okay, let's go back to the 1800s, where a lot of our work customs got established. Were there women saying, you know what? I don't want to clean this house. I want to go out and fight the Indians. I want to go out and hunt deer and all this other stuff. I want to go out and do all the heavy farming. Or was technology at a point where the roles that were established made perfect sense? And so there's a phrase called spring cleaning, and it comes from the fact that it took 2.5, 3 months to clean your house before there was a vacuum, before there was Windex, before there were wet naps, before it would take a week to clean a rug, to shake out a rug and all kinds of stuff. And so these customs and roles were out of necessity and not out of, oh my God, we just want to keep women in the house and we want to do all the work and we want to do all of this. You go back to the 1800s, there weren't women sitting there going, you know what? I wish I could abort this child. This child's an inconvenience. They would be like, no, oh my God, God bless me with another child. And this child's going to be able to help around the house. And this child's going to make our family stronger. And this child's going to bring us entertainment and joy into this household, more for the siblings to play with. And the family's going to get stronger. A child was the greatest blessing. Now we move all the way here, now that there's DoorDash, now that Roughnecks or the guys that would build skyscrapers, and like 25% of them either died or got seriously injured being roughnecks. There weren't women sitting around going, you know what, I'd rather build that skyscraper than men. I'd rather use dynamite to blow a hole through that mountain so we could build roads. There weren't women wanting to do this. Men are risk takers. Men make incredible sacrifices for women and children. Look at our life expectancy rate. It's 7, 8 years shorter than women.
Yeah.
That's because of the sacrifices and the risks that we're willing to take. And in our proper minds, we're like, hey, no, this woman's womb is so valuable. She's the creator of life. She is, and so we have to do everything to protect that. And
But now we're renting that same womb for two men to be able to have babies, right? So we've just gone backwards and placing value on those things that make a nation strong. Like that's the whole point, right? I mean, in a society, in a government, it is to like, what is the foundation of every civilization? It is the family. And so if you want a strong civilization and you're moonwalking your way backwards through the steps, then you realize you have to have a strong family. And there are thousands of years of data that we can look at that says there's a particular type of family structure that will that stands the better chance at producing healthy, physically, mentally strong next generation. So the government should say, well, let's put our effort into making sure that that family structure is built up in such a way that it can produce the next generation who will take this constitution, take these laws, and do something even greater, continue to move us forward. And I'm looking at where we find ourselves today at our young people. They are riddled with anxiety. They don't know who they are. They have to wait until I tell them I'm a woman before, so that they don't misgender me. They can't just look at me and think for themselves. They have to wait to be told what to think about me before they can make a decision or anything else. So, and you have, there's this thing called the U curve of happiness. It's literally shaped like a U, and it starts measuring happiness between the ages of 18 to 29. And at the top end of that U is, 18 to 29, you should be your happiest. This is your happiest you're ever going to be for the most part. You're happy, you're healthy, you're young, all of that. But then as you progress through life and you get around your 40s and 50s, like that's the slump. You got bills, you got children in college, you have the stresses of the world, missed opportunities, all those things. But then you retire and you start having grandkids and you're traveling, and now you're back on the upswing of the U curve, right? And that has been the case, not just in America, but around the world for decades now. Now, starting like around 2017, all of a sudden that U curve is no longer U. At 18 is the most depressed. It's a hump now, is the way that it looks. 18 is the most depressed. And it's not just here in America, it's around the world. And when I saw that Algeria boxer, when I saw Algeria, when they went back, the male Khalif was the boxer from Nigeria who was fighting against the female boxer, Karini, I believe her last name is. They went over to Algeria and they were just talking to random people on the street, and they were all like, oh no, he's a she. Oh no, that's a woman. And I realized, okay, this isn't something. America is not the only country that has been captured by what we now term as wokeism, but it's a world. It's a group.
And so, yeah, it's we've got things so backwards and upside down, Kathy. And look, a man and a woman raising a child is the perfect cocoon for proper development and nurturing creative, well-adjusted kids. And we've turned that upside down and said, nope, anybody can do it. You don't need a man and a woman. You don't need to be married. You don't need two parents. And then we wonder why our kids seem to be in such turmoil, so out of control, so disrespectful, because they don't have the proper supervision. They don't, what mama and daddy should be, the mama and daddy together should be the personal supervisors, and like that's who officer friendly should be, rather than waiting for your kid to be 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, and now he's got to answer to police officers,
Right.
and now you're looking for police officers to be patient with him and
Right.
and just understanding. That's because you weren't on your job.
Right.
And so if we were on our jobs, if we were in our proper roles, we would be still producing kids that had thoughts and dreams that extended well beyond being uh, influencers on social media apps and making TikTok videos. Our kids don't even dream big anymore. There's some study where 70, 80% of the kids are thinking they want to be some sort of social media influencer.
Yeah.
That's their dream. And there's no variety to the serious endeavors. We're raising a group of idiots, and it's our fault. We've made them idiots. They don't know how to spell. And just think about the rewards again. And Kathy, you said this at the very beginning, but I think about like Snoop Dogg. They're paying him $500,000 a day to be at the Olympics and to promote the Olympics. And I'm like, this guy's a chronic drug abuser. He proudly brags about being in a gang. He promotes gang lifestyle. He's been pictured and claims to be some sort of pimp, an actual pimp. And this is who we're paying $500,000 a day to go to Paris and promote the United States of America. This is who
Wow.
we're setting out there for kids. And so a guy like me, and you referenced yourself, we grew up thinking like, okay, if I work hard and I stay out of trouble and I avoid these bad decisions, oh, I'm going to get rewarded in this society. There will be rewards for me. And now I look up and go, it's the actual criminal. It's the gang member. It's the irresponsible person. It's the person that promotes all kinds of negativity. That's who we put on a pedestal and celebrate. It's insanity.
How do we get back? I mean, like, what is the path? I guess that's the $1,000,000 question. I honestly believe, I don't know. I mean, like, what do you think? Like,
It's
where do
going
we
to take
go
a
from here?
religious. It's going to take a religious revival, and it's going to probably take uh, more pain and suffering before we're ready to go there. And
Well, when I woke up this morning, the world, the literal world is on fire right now. I mean, there are, you name a continent, it is in upheaval right now. And it's not a small thing. And this is how, I had General Flynn as a really good friend of mine, and we were talking, but he was like, this is how world wars begin. They start off as regional and they begin to spread. And you begin to see people find others who they think, hey, this person is going to listen to me and protect my interests more. And before you know it, you have a number of other countries falling into this upheaval. And just the things I've listed, I mean, there's like 10 of them. I woke up this morning. It's like, I'm going to write this down. I think we're going to want to remember this day. And when I turn on the news, what are we talking about? When I open up Twitter, what are these influencers, quote unquote, talking about? And none of it seems to be anything of real substance. Last question for you, my friend. You have said many times that you have never voted in your life. I find that so hard to believe, but I believe you. But it's just like, how? I do not believe, now running my own competitive senatorial race, working with Vivek Ramaswamy in the presidential campaign, I no longer believe, if I ever did before, maybe I've shifted the weight of which politics will get us back in line. Politics is a tool, and I believe it can be an effective tool that we can lever to move ourselves back on the right path, to pull ourselves off the ledge. But I don't believe it's the sole tool any longer, or the most important tool that we have. I'm thinking other things are now. Just having conversations, being willing to say the quiet parts out loud, having a backbone, having courage. I think those are tools as well. But for the tool of politics, I do believe there's a place for it. And you said you've never voted before. Will you be voting in this election?
I'm considering it. I do think there's a clear distinction between the Democrat Party and the Republican Party, and that you know what the Democrats are trying to do is clearly evil. I'm not sure that the Republican Party is sincerely interested in combating that, and that's not
Why do
uh,
you say that?
because a lot of what transpires, like particularly at the border as it relates to illegal immigration, it seems like a gimmick that if the Republicans get power, do I believe they'll take the necessary steps to stop the crisis at the border? I'm not so sure. I don't have that confidence.
Do you think outside of Donald Trump, because I do believe Donald Trump's intentions with the Black community is an earnest attempt
Yeah. Hmm.
to make inroads, but and I believe that the people on the ground within the Republican Party, they have a sincere interest in bringing in people who don't typically vote Republican. I've seen that firsthand. But the Republican Party itself is a system. It's an organization. It's an institution. And outside of Donald Trump, outside of the people on the ground, do you believe that the Republican political system is very interested in bringing people into the party who have not necessarily voted Republican historically?
I'm not dodging your question, but I'm just giving you a sincere answer. I don't care about outreach to people that are outside the party, uh, because if you have to change your values in order to bring people in,
It's not worth
uh,
it.
then it's not worth it. And if you have to, it's again, I come from a biblical standpoint of if a preacher is preaching a sermon that only works in one zip code, he's not preaching the true word of God. And
That
so
is good, Jason.
and so when people start, oh,
Wow.
I got this message for this group and this message for that group, you ain't really standing on nothing. And that is where my respect for Donald Trump, that guy showing up at NABJ and talking his talk and be like, oh, I'm not fitting to change up. I'm not going to pander. I'm not going to tell these guys what they want to hear. They sat around and made me wait 35 minutes. They lied to me about who was going to be here that hooked with me. And now I get out here and the first question is some kind of disrespectful, blah, blah, blah. That's what I like about Donald Trump,
Yeah,
his authenticity.
it is.
And so is
And I
the
believe he's authentic.
yeah,
I personally don't believe the political system is as interested as he is in bringing people, Black people specifically, Hispanic people, I don't care, anyone who's not a part of the cabal, the clique, into the system. I know I
again,
said last
here
question
would be my
before.
here would be my concern though, as it relates to uh, an- I want to see us Black people
Yeah,
reject the thinking of the left. I don't want them to
yeah,
switch who they vote for. I want them to
yeah,
reject the thinking of the left. Uh,
yes.
period.
Jason, I mean, like you are reading my mind because I have long since stopped asking Black people to change their registration from Democrat to Republican. I want us to make ourselves more attractive so that people will come to us. And that people, I mean, because I worked in the Wall Street environment and I saw when these politicians come into these predominantly white boardrooms and what they were bringing with them. And I've also seen what Hillary Clinton and now Kamala Harris brought to predominantly Black voters. They brought Jay-Z, Beyonce, and this other girl, who was gyrating on stage with Kamala Harris. That's what they bring us, right? But I've seen in those boardrooms what they bring other people, or even to the Indian community. I see what they bring to them. They don't bring, I can't think of any Indian singers, but they're bringing real economic opportunities and open doors and chairs at the table. What do you think it will take for Black people who've been voting almost exclusively Democrat for the past 60 years? What do you think it's going to take for Black people to get out of their emotions and to see it for what it is? Not necessarily become Republican, but to start voting in their own and our collective own best interest.
I think it's going to take ministers telling the truth from pulpits, and we get lied to in churches constantly. We're never told the truth, and we sit. Many of our churches think the world is explained by skin color, and it's just not true. The world is explained mostly by bankers and by money. And it's like what ministers refuse to do is talk about usury, the loaning of money at interest. It's all over the Bible. Jesus cleaned out the temple and threw a tantrum and brought out a whip and beat the money changers up out of there over the way they were loaning money and exploiting the poor. And so usury is something that should be spelled out and explained inside the church. It's not. And so we have a very unsophisticated view of how the world actually works and what's at the heart of corruption. And it's the banking system. It's the taxation of income. We've all been made into debt slaves and we think we're free. And so so if ministers actually talked about what's really going on in the world, and if they've been to any theological school or seminary or whatever, and they don't understand these basic principles, they wasted their money, and you're wasting your time at their church. And if they're sitting there talking about black, white, race this, race that, that, and they're not talking about your true enslaver, and it's the person you owe money, and Jesus Christ and the Bible are crystal clear on this, we'll never have a understanding of the world, and we'll never understand what these conflicts are really about, and why there's been this constant war drum and wars constantly, because bankers get rich off of that. They put countries into debt. And so there has to be, and that's why I can't say anti-voting, but for me personally, I'm just not, because there are no political solutions to spiritual problems. All these problems are spiritual. We have a lack of sophistication in our biblical worldview. And unless we get sophisticated, we'll never figure out this maze, this matrix they built for us, and we'll remain debt slaves, and we'll remain at each other's throats, and we'll remain
fighting over the scraps
in a game that is exploiting us. Kathy, thank you. So I got to run.
Thank you. I know you do. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you guys. Again, hit the subscribe button, the notification button, leave a comment. All of it works in the world of algorithm. And I will see you guys later. Blessings. Bye-bye.